So let us try to go through these few verses. The first verse is Qul huwallahu ahad. Say He is Allah and who is one. Ahad. That is an important message which has been conveyed over here, that He is the only one. He is the one and only God. There are no alternatives to Him. There are no equals. There is no like, no partner, no son, no wife. He is above everything. Usually, when we again read the translation and we say He is one, in our mind the calculation goes, okay, there must be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or there is a male, and then we say, then there must be an opposite to that, a female. There is hot, then the opposite is cold. Because we have always been trained to have something matching whatever has been presented to us. But when we say Qul huwallahu ahad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He is matchless. He is matchless in everything as a being and in His attributes, in His qualities. Like whenever you have to think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to think of Him as no comparison with anyone. Because a lot of time when we are complaining, when we are angry, when we are trying to talk to Him, we are in our mind thinking of how we do different things with our fellow beings, with the creation. He is the creator. That's the major difference that we have to understand. And being creator, what applies to human beings does not apply to Him. Whatever qualities and nature He has is so unique. He's designed in such a way, everything that is there, which would be in pairs, which would be with opposites. But for Him, when we say He is one, He is ahad. So ahad would mean no match. And you have to keep repeating that in your mind and your heart, that there is no match for Him. That's what I do when I'm going through very terrible time in my life, very low time, and I'm sitting and thinking, why this is happening in my life? And I'm making so many du'as, why things are not getting better immediately. And then I ask myself, look, Allah is so perfect in His qualities, Him as a being, the creator, He is Al-Khaliq. It is so easy for Him. All He has to do is say kun and it would happen. My whole life would be transformed. But if my life is not getting transformed, then that means He knows this is the best deal He can give me at the moment. This is in my benefit. So what I have to do is learn from this difficult situation, this difficult scenario, and see how I can develop myself even further. The next verse says, Allahu Samad. So Allah, the eternal refuge. Again, we have to understand His being perfect. What does Samad mean? Samad basically comes from a root word which means something solid. So when you have something solid in front of you, it is going to be a tough one. Nothing can harm, nothing can damage, and plus it will be the most useful thing you will have for yourself. So when we say Allah is solid, that brings in list of so many things. He doesn't have any successor. He doesn't have any inheritor. He doesn't have any fault. When we say, why is there evil in the world when Allah is supposed to be Rahman and Rahim, being very kind and merciful? Why there are so many killings? Why there are so many discrepancies? Why people do zulm? Why? And Samad means, well, there is a reason behind it. I might not be able to understand, but there is wisdom to whatever He does. He's solid, Samad. He doesn't forget when sometimes people make dua and say, why is He not listening to my duas? You can see there's so many things that we do, so many actions that we take, which are breaching our sincerity in the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then He's solid, so there are no trials for Him. Nobody can overpower Him. It's not like He is the king at the moment, but a day would come then He won't be king. As I said, this is like something where nothing can go in, nothing can come out, nothing can cover it, nothing can rule it. Epitome of perfection is there, and He's eternal. We say Allah is the refuge which anyone can sought in any difficult time of need, when we are in trouble, when we are in distress, when we are facing any kind of adversity, we need to realize I am helpless. But the main source with whom I need to get connected, who is solid, Samad, and he can help me. Allah is there. He never failed. He is ready to answer my call whenever I am in deep trouble in any way. Man is the only loser if he ignores whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give. There is a narration, which is a hadith Qudsi, in which we find out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am as my servant thinks of me, and I am with him if he calls me. In another narration, we find out Prophet ﷺ said, when you ask Allah. And when you seek help, seek it of Allah. So when we say Allah Samad, that tells us this is my very solid support. A support that's not going to fail me. If I'm seeking this support, things are not still getting better, then I need to understand why. Rather than thinking that this support has failed me somehow. This is Samad bin Yaz. And the next is Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad. He neither begets nor is born. He doesn't have family need. We need family. Now, I have seen so many young people who say, I'll be so happy living on my own, very independently, having no one around me, no one to bug me, like my parents or even my siblings. But when we are on our own, we start feeling depressed. We need socialization. Lot of medical diseases, they say, they happen if people do not socialize. There was a long-term study done at Harvard. They did it for their students, and they said those students who had healthy socialization, they thrive in the later years in their life when they were professionals and they were high achievers. And even students who studied from Harvard, but they did not have any healthy interaction and socialization, they suffered in their emotional health as well as in physical health. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, subhanallah, He doesn't need family. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-An'am, verse number 101, Badi'us samawati wal earth. To Him is due the primeval origin of the heavens and the earth. When we say Badi, Badi means He generated the raw material and He generated the concept of what should be made. It is impossible concept for us. But He knew for everything, whatever the working or the functionality would be and what kind of a raw material should be made for that. And then, Anni yakunu lahu walad walam yakul lahu sahiba. How can He have a son when He has no wife? Wa khalaqa kulla shayin. He created all things. Wa huwa bikulli shayin alim. And He has full knowledge of all the things. So the perfectionism that exists for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't exist anywhere else. We are looking at different family structures. We depend on the family. We need the family. And we want to have someone to turn to and get the support. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need anyone. That is why we can rely on Him. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes us to have tawakkul on Him. Some of your friends might be relying on you, but sometimes when they desperately need you to be there, you have a family commitment. You are socializing with someone else, or someone else needs you at that moment. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't need the family, so He is there for us all the time. And then the next verse says, verse number 4, وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. Again the same thing, nor is there to Him any equivalent. What we need is to instill this sincerity about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the most prime concept that we need to have in our heart, in our words, in our deeds, that I say, I'm sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to be His abd. I believe He is one. He is matchless. He is perfect. Because the moment you say that, that aligns with so many concepts, so many things that you have to actually be functional about. And the more you do it, Ikhlas claims that you are acknowledging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the supreme authority in your life. You feel that nobody else can reach that level. What we need to then do is the ikhlas or sincerity then automatically brings us to this point that I need to put all the things that You've asked me to do, as He says, I mean, it is sometimes so ironic. We talk about different researches and we say, oh, so and so research tells us to eat this or that, or live our life like this or that, or work on our relationships like this or that. And we immediately start putting it into practice. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in Quran all those concepts. The perfect concepts are there in Quran that we need to put into practice. And remember, when we become sincere in our heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the transformational force because it purifies our intention, it strengthens our worship, it helps us to acceptance of the deeds, how this should be done. There is a lot of inner peace and contentment. You are saved from hypocrisy and you develop a very close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, those very ambiguous kind of questions, they just simply washed off. And there is a lot of barakah that you feel in your life because what you're doing is you tell everyone, I'm sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sincere in my practices of deen. And I'm doing it because I strongly believe He's the perfect being and I must be listening to Him. You don't become an apologetic Muslim. Because a lot of time, what we're doing is, especially when we're interacting with non-Muslims, and they are always bringing so many questions to us, and we feel so cornered, and then we are very defensive. We are trying to explain things to them. We are not confident about our deen, our practices. We should be like saying, yes, I believe in God, and I practice this way because, I have understood He's the creator, and creator is the perfect being. So when he tells me to do something, it might not be the norm of the society, but norms of society, they keep changing. The scientific research keeps changing, but the perfect being, whatever he has told us, it's universal. It's not going to change, and that brings a lot of sincerity in our actions. Like whenever you're doing something, you're regularly asking yourself, why am I doing it? Why am I taking care of my parents? Not because I need a raise in pocket money, I need permission. I'm dependent on them. And once I am out of this house, I'll do what I want to do. No, I'm doing it for sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after his right, talks about right of the parents. So that's why I'm doing it. It's very simple. Similarly, what you do is you avoid people pleasing. This is such an important concept because people pleasing is so shady. Like we are always in trouble because we are trying to please people around us. Our inside might be shouting and telling us, look, don't do this or do it in this way. But what we do is, at the cost of our own authenticity, we just please people. We do regret it later on. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have been there. I should have said no. I don't know how to say no. And you become so transparent and truthful. Whatever you say, you mean it, whatever you say, and then you try to practice that. You do good without expecting returns. That's a selfless kind of relationship you have. A lot of people, when they talk to me and they said, you know what, so and so of my relative showing such a bad attitude, and I tried to practice a good behavior with that person solely for sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But now I'm so depressed. And I ask them, why are you depressed? And the person would say, I'm depressed because this person never returned that favor or returned that behavior in any way. She's still a very critical person, a very angry person in my life, or very negative person in my life. So I say, did you do it for Allah's sake? Yes, I did it. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, for Allah's sake. I said, but if you did it for Allah's sake, why you are expecting return from the same particular person? If you did it for Allah's sake, Allah can return it from any other spot, any other way. If you're only focused on that person, that means there is a problem over there. And what we do is we seek Allah's help in whatever we do. We pray for sincerity in our heart and in our actions. Let's listen to Surah Ikhlas. So we finish off with this, the link of taqwa with sincerity and how we become sincere. And whenever I go through Surah Ikhlas, I always feel to be sincere, I don't have to say sorry to anyone, or I don't have to bow down to anyone, or I don't have to be blackmailed by anyone. All I have to do is understand the perfection and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just understand that. And the moment I understand, my heart becomes sincere and my actions automatically start reflecting it.
You talked about sincerity in relationships. You spoke about how people should be able to trust you based on your sincerity. I have two questions around this. Why should you display sincerity to people if you're not seeking the external validation? Because if you're being sincere and then people just sort of credit your behavior and things like that, that's just the external validation that you don't really want.
Actually, as human beings, we are weak beings and we do look for external validation, one way or the other. If you even talk about motivation, I don't know how much you have studied any material on motivation. They say that initially we start with external motivation. That is, we need to have some sort of praise or some sort of reward system, tangible reward system. And once we start having some stability in whatever we are seeking motivation for, then we move towards internal motivation. And the sustainability comes with internal motivation. So, in our relationships, yes, we should not be seeking external validation, but that external validation does please us, does give us some sort of a comfort zone. Like, when people are able to appreciate you, bring in the positive elements in the relationship, that does have an impact. But yes, at the very same time, when we move at a higher level, what we do is we do good for people without thinking of any return. We should be sincere towards people, not because we are looking for external validation, because that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do in different relationships. I should be sincere in my relationship towards my parents, towards my spouse, towards my kids, towards my students, my teacher, because that sincerity is basically going to help me being well grounded.
You went on further to say that with your own sincerity, it'll help you trust people in like depends on situation obviously, but it'll allow you to trust other people. But I don't really understand how my sincerity will help me trust other people, or how can I
Oh,
judge
yeah.
that other people are on the same
Okay.
wavelength or have the same intentions?
When you're sincere and when you especially have a strong bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because sincerity would be coming when your reliance is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not on the people. Okay. So when you are sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the relationship, then you are interacting with different people. What we find out from one of the narration of the Prophet ﷺ is that we need to be interacting with people on their face value. We should not be trying to interpret their actions, that what's in their heart. So that's the Guman thing. And when we do that, then things become even better. Like sometimes I have come across situation when especially a married girl would come to me and say that I think my in-laws hate me. And I'm like, did they say it? And they immediately back off and they say, and obviously nobody's going to say that she hates me, but her actions are proving, or I'm getting this gut feeling that she hates me. So I always tell them that look, the first thing is, unless someone actually says it to you in so many words, I don't like you, back off, hey, I hate you, I can't stand you, I want to limit my relationship with you, one way or the other, someone says that, only then what you do is you say, okay, the so and so hates me, and then you decide whatever you have to do with the relationship. But if someone doesn't say it and you're only getting this feeling, this vibe, then you tell yourself that I'm going to be at my best behavior. I'm going to do everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects me to do in a certain relationship, wants me to do, or commands me to do in a certain relationship, and I'm gonna draw my limit over there. That's it. And I'm not going to go deep into that person's heart or try to make interpretations. A lot of people who have overthinking pattern, and whenever you ask them to list down their thoughts, and then you ask them whether it's a fact or it's an interpretation. And many of the times they say it's an interpretation. This is something that I'm perceiving. Nobody has actually said that. So then we tell them that discard the interpretation. And if this interpretation is bothering you so much, then only work on your own behavior that way. And things are, inshallah, going to get better. So that's what you do. You do not go deep into the people's relationship, do not go deep into digging what they're thinking unless they want to share themselves. You just do things as they should be. And you will notice that a lot of our relationships are going to be more stable that way. Okay, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.